We've had enough time with all three of the usual suspects, that's the Google Pixel 8 Pro, Apple's iPhone 15 Pro Max and Samsung's Galaxy S24 Ultra, to know that they're some of the most accomplished phones on the market. So as the season warms up and we get a few more hours of daylight to play with, we figured it was high time for a three-way camera face-off, to see which phone performs the best for your photographic needs. Before we get to snapping though, for those not so familiar with this trio of mobile titans, here are some of the highlights worth knowing. Starting with the Pixel 8 Pro, Google's latest and greatest delivers the company's best AI smarts yet thanks to its in-house Tensor G3 chip, helping you with everything from screening calls to making sure everyone's smiling and looking at the camera in that photo from your auntie's 60th birthday. Where photography is concerned, the 8 Pro's hardware falls to a 50-megapixel main sensor boasting superior low light to the Pixel 7 Pro's primary camera, a 48-megapixel ultra-wide with a tuned macro mode, and a 48-megapixel telephoto that offers 5x optical zoom and helps facilitate the phone's max 30x super res zoom. Apple, by comparison, hasn't yet gone hard on branding every feature under the sun with AI, but that doesn't make the iPhone 15 Pro Max any less of a cutting-edge powerhouse, with one of the most capable mobile chips on the market in the company's own A17 Pro SoC, and the first periscopic telephoto camera ever on an iPhone, with its unique tetraprism 5x optical zoom. The iPhone is also the only entry in this face-off that can capture in the company's established ProRAW and ProRes formats for greater versatility, if you're the kind who likes to edit after the fact. Then we have the Galaxy S24 Ultra. It looks like its predecessors, but boasts the best performance of any Android phone currently on the market from a custom-tuned Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chip. A truly stunning 6.8-inch 120Hz display, a killer quad camera on the rear, and for a unique touch, Samsung's iconic S Pen stylus. Galaxy AI features can be found all over the Ultra experience, translating phone calls in real time and letting you reframe photos with generative fill. But like the last Ultra, camera versatility remains one of its biggest strengths. Like its rivals here, you now have a 5x optical zoom to work with, but through some clever sensor cropping, the Ultra actually affords you 6 lossless focal lengths from 0.6 up to 10 times zoom, as well as still capturing at up to 200 megapixels thanks to its main sensor, and up to 8K 30fps video capture as well. As you'll see from our test samples, we shot on a characteristically bright cloudy day in London town, starting with these shots of Vic against Tower Bridge. The Pixel adopts perhaps the most striking results in this well-lit scene, with strong contrast and colours. It also served up the most true-to-life colours for Vic's skin and hair. However, the rest of the scene has a slight magenta tinge that looks a little unnatural by comparison to the other two phones. The iPhone caught a nicer, brighter image overall, with softer contrast and a cooler overall look, as well as the most balanced dynamic range processing, bringing up the darkest parts of the image without making the entire scene appear flat. It also captures at twice the default resolution of the other two phones. The S24 Ultra, like the Pixel, miscoloured the overall scene with a slight green tint this time, but otherwise applied good colour and contrast to Vic herself, while the phone's larger sensor and lens result in a slightly wider shot with shallower depth, applying a pleasing natural softness to the background. It does however look a little washed out. So while all three have specific strengths, I'd give this one to the iPhone. Next up, Vic's blue suede shoes, captured outside with a strip of bright cloudy sky directly above between buildings that rose high on either side. Here, the Pixel clenches it for blending the high contrast and great detail capture, also seen on the iPhone, but with more accurate colours. Removing natural light from the scene and relying on what was predominantly the strong uplighting, like the Tower Bridge shot, the Pixel spits out the most striking and high contrast image with a lot of shadow detail on the brickwork. With Samsung's move away from its former heavily processed approach to photography, I think it managed the most true to life and visually pleasing result, although I wish it had applied the iPhone's processing when it came to dynamic range, with Apple's phone being the only one of the three to avoid blowing out Vic's skin on her hand, even if the shot overall was comparatively too cool. One of the first shots we actually took on the day was this high contrast scene, as I thought it was a great way to assess how these phones handle metering and dynamic range processing. The Pixel's preference for contrast is exacerbated here, with its attempts to stop down the scene in order to capture what's beyond the arch, leaving the shot underexposed overall, while the light sources still appear blown out. In second place is the iPhone, which shows up great colours, contrast, and manages to rescue some of the brightest parts of the shot in the back of the scene, but not quite as well as the S24 Ultra, which produced a similar end result but did an amazing job more correctly exposing the entire scene, keeping all the detail beyond the arch as well as all the lit brickwork in the foreground. Now let's talk zoom. While all three of these phones have large main sensors and periscopic 5x telephoto cameras too, they all handle zoom a little differently. Samsung unsurprisingly serves up the greatest versatility, with its combination of secondary dedicated 3x telephoto sensor and sensor cropping, actually giving you lossless shots at 0.6, 1, 3, 5 and 10 times magnification, as well as that insane 100 times space zoom feature, which might seem useless on first impressions but means you've got more headroom at distances between that 10 and 100 times that the other phones struggle to match. As for consistency and overall quality, I think the iPhone deserves a pat on the back here, as it doesn't overextend like the Samsung, meaning even its max distance, 25 times lossy shots, still hold an impressive amount of detail and information. The Pixel meanwhile doesn't disappoint in this test, but it just wins a participation award for serving up consistent and usable shots that don't turn heads like the other two. Also, don't fall for Apple's 24, 28, 35mm lens marketing. It's just cropping on the main sensor, which I'd advise you just do in post for greater control. While all three phones can deliver in conventional low-light shooting scenarios like nights out and dusk, I wanted to see what work the image processing and sensors are actually having to do, so we shot in this windowless room with the door almost completely shut, to the point where I could only just about make out the plants on the wall with the naked eye. Low light capture without night mode proved challenging for all three phones, with the iPhone cranking the ISO up to retain the most sharpness and detail at the expense of exhibiting the most sensor noise. With Google's well-established prowess in night sight, it didn't even try here, creating sort of a pinky, sludgy shot with such underwhelming detail and colour information that it looks like we're actually shooting with infrared. Then the S24 Ultra comes along with the best of a bad situation by offering up sharper detail than the Pixel and less noise than the iPhone at the expense of a green tint to the scene. Flip to night mode and it's the Samsung that shows the least improvement though, struggling to recover much colour detail or improve exposure all that much either. The iPhone has the fastest night mode capture time and produced a usable shot with good detail but poor dynamic range, plus it added a yellow hue to the scene. The Pixel meanwhile moves from the back to the front of the pack by being able to render a shot that looks like it was taken in a lit room. It's still dim, sure, but there's clear definition in the subject, tangible detail in the shadows, and it's the only phone where you can actually tell that the leaves on the plants are really green. Portrait mode using the main cameras on each phone yielded some interesting results, with both Android phones struggling to segment Vic from the background cleanly, while the iPhone over-softened her a little bit too much. In all three cases, the level of bokeh looks too extreme as standard, with the iPhone offering the most effective adjustment over this after capture. The Pixel wins the award for subject detail, while the S24 Ultra manages the most accurate colours. While all three phones crop in by default, the Pixel locks you in to a 1.5 times zoom as standard, while you can punch much further out with the Galaxy and the iPhone as well. The Pixel's tendency to increase contrast and underexpose in bright conditions carries across to its front 10.5 megapixel camera too, while the iPhone and Galaxy's 12 megapixel selfie snappers appear brighter and retain more face detail in direct comparison. The S24 captures the narrowest field of view and that characteristic slight green tint, but offers the best overall composition, covering colour, contrast and detail capture, while the iPhone once again wins for edge detection and for offering the most natural looking bokeh, even if shots err on the cooler side. Finishing with video capture, our 4K 60fps test footage revealed that while close, the iPhone's stabilization and autofocus tracking rule supreme, but that colour and contrast take a nosedive compared to the still shots this phone is able to produce. The S24 Ultra overexposed and oversharpened footage, but did the best job at filtering out wind noise, while the Pixel came out on top even without leaning on its AI-enhanced video boost feature. Not only did footage more closely match still photo quality and fidelity, but provided you're happy with the degree to which it punches in, you get a warmer and more filmic overall image with attractive depth of field from the main sensor as well. It's worth noting that if you're looking for a new phone to slot into a content capture workflow, the iPhone arguably has the best codecs and toolset, with Samsung's flagship offering up the highest degree of control at capture.
So with these titans tested, what do you think? Are you a fan of the Pixel still photography or more of a lover of the iPhone's video skills? Maybe the sheer breadth of features and flexibility offered up by the S24 Ultra gets your vote. Whichever device won your vote, let us know down in the comments below. Hit like if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, and hit subscribe to TechRadar for the latest and greatest in all things consumer tech. And head to techradar.com for so much more. Thanks, and see you next time.